Well, here we are with season reflections. So let me start by, asking as usual for you, Waiyaki, to introduce yourself.
Thanks, Njeri. Jetago Waiyaki wa Gĩcanga, mũcara wa mbara ya mũturi, hamari kama wathani ndĩ wa Mwangi, gaciarwo nĩ Maina. Ndĩ mũihwa na airimo a mbara ya Mbogo. Na thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Waiyaki. I already miss you when we're not even in our last episode of season 2. I'm already waiting for season 3. This has been quite a journey. So what about you, King Ori? Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, once again, I'd like to say hello to everyone. Oyo ne King Ori wa Kanyi, moboy wa bare ya Marigo, wa Githaku kia Muruga, de wa Marikamerema wa Thani Mwangi, gaciarwo nĩ Maina. And I'm happy to be here as always. And like I always say, I like to mention that de muthuri wa kiama, and that I have learnt a lot from that process. And I'm happy to be here to share a little bit of what I can.
Oh, we are so grateful to you, King Ori. And this season 2 has been delicious because of your presence in it. And we are so happy to have had you through this journey, because today we are going through a memory lane, season reflections episode. So I think that we should start it a little bit juicy. And how I think we should start it is perhaps with you, Waiyaki. Maybe as you reflect on Matire Gemi, and as having gone through 2 seasons, and the reason that you decided to go down this journey of Kerera and Matire Gemi, tell us a little bit about what your experience has been. How have you transformed? And what does all this mean to you? And by the way, we also kind of want to know which has been your favorite episode of Matire Gemi so far.
That's a lot of questions to unpack. So... But I'll say, when in 2013 or 14, my dad came to visit me here in Houston, and he brought me a book. Actually, I have this book in front of me. It's the 1,000 Kikuyu Proverbs by G. Bara. And when I was growing up, my dad used to always teach us using the mo. And Dimo is the word for Proverbs in Kikuyu, even though Dimo means, measured words. It's like words that are measured. So he would tell us things like, Mudhomi mwega arolaga kafere, which means, a good student always looks ahead. A good student always looks at the road before him before traveling, So my dad used to give us sayings all the time. And so with that, when he brought me this book, it just took me back to when I was a kid, talking to my dad about different things. And then since then, I started just reading the book and trying to understand and, talking to different people, asking my dad, what does this mean? Asking my mom, what does this mean? And when I tell my parents this story, my mom is the one who says, she says, I was in Nairobi and I was in a bookshop and I bought this book and told my dad and told my husband, can you take this book to Waiyaki in the US? So, that's kind of like how I got into, understanding or getting interested in learning, our culture, through those measured words or what we call Dimo. Mm-hmm. And it's been a long journey, and then with the internet and YouTube and listening to radio, all through those years is when I started learning and building a library and collecting books and meeting very many good people who have given me a lot of kerera, so to speak. Yeah, so that's kind of like my backstory.
Okay.
On how I got into Kerera.
And I love that backstory. I remember my mom used to like to tell me one Dimo, which I know every girl growing up was told, almost. Which
one is that?
Which nowadays I take to mean perseverance is important. So I love your story, Waiyaki. And, let me ask you this. What was your favorite episode so far?
So, I have a lot of favorite episodes, and, there's two that stand out to me. And, the first one is the one on Gemi. The one on Gemi particularly is, because the philosophy of Gemi is very, it's deep in a sense, and it's very enlightening for when you understand, because you've been hearing Gemis all the time. You hear Gemis at weddings, you hear Gemis at all sorts of occasions. So when I learned about Gemis and what they mean and what they stand for, what they manifest for children and adults per se, and so that episode, and obviously because the name Matire Gemi is the name of our podcast, so that particular episode is close to my heart. But the other one I also like is, and I like them all, but the philosophy of Moratina also, because to me, I think when I listen to those two episodes back, I think from the episode of Gemi and the episode of Moratina, I feel like I developed in the art of storytelling personally, so I feel like, when I told the story of, how the bees make honey, and, how the Moratina fruit, what its significance is, I felt like I didn't know I could be able to tell stories that have meaning and people would resonate with. So I think those two episodes are close to my heart, are really close to my heart. But I love them all. I love all the episodes.
I think they're amazing. And truly, I think those were great episodes. I agree with you, Waiyaki. And you really did take us down a beautiful journey in season 1, where you really introduced us to a lot of concepts and the philosophy of the Mogekoyo, which really set the stage and the foundation for us to actually go deeper in season 2, and I'm sure even deeper in season 3. So we loved those episodes as much as you did. So thank you for that, Waiyaki. It has been a beautiful journey. All right, so I think now it's for you, King Ori Muthuri wa Kiama. So tell us a little bit about your journey into Kirira. Like, how did this happen? How did you end up here?
Yeah, so a lot like Waiyaki, I come from a family that never quite let it go. So I have my late father who was significantly older than I and my siblings, and would really just ooze some level of sagely wisdom that always kind of piqued my interest. So there's that, and there are all the other relatives, especially on my paternal side. My maternal family was a bit more modern, but my paternal family was a bit more steeped in our ways. And so whenever we interacted with them, you could feel that, ancient knowledge coming through. And even in the way we did things, the way we slaughtered during holidays, there was this, it just felt, it felt like something regal that we were getting into, with the way everyone had decorum and the way you couldn't, the way everyone behaved and carried themselves. They carried themselves so much dignity that I felt, always just lucky to have had that, close to me. As I got older, even before I got older, like most of us, I grew up in the city of Nairobi, and as Western as can be, completely, surrounded by Western media. I loved Boys to Men and hip hop and whatever, just like the rest of us, and just really sought to immerse myself fully in the Western culture. And so it's not unusual that this journey led to coming to the United States and getting here and starting to really make a life here. It just felt like, ooh, I think something's missing. There's that feeling of, being rooted that started to feel like it was being chipped away. And so I think that's where my journey starts. And I start looking for books, like the Facing Mount Kenya by Kenyatta and a few other books. Those are the easier ones to find, the Ngugi wa Thiong'o books, any proverbs somewhere. It just became a curiosity that started building and interacting with, as whenever I'd find elders anywhere, I would interact with them. And I didn't know what I was looking for until much later. I realized, what I'm looking for? I was looking for our civilization, because we think civilization is something, physical and, cities and what have you. Civilization is actually, the word for civilization in Kiswahili carries it's closer to home for us. And the word for civilization in Kiswahili is something that is a bit closer to home. It's ustaarabu. When we say ustaarabu, when we say that word in Swahili, we know what it means. It means how you carry yourself, this demeanor and this way you treat people and the way you seem like an easygoing, flowing person. Ustaarabu is civilization. And it is actually also odoire in Kikuyu, the way that I live, the way that I'm living. And so I felt like I was missing that. Where is this strong sense of justice that I grew up with? And seems like it wasn't so much present with, in my new life here in the United States. It's there, but in a different way. So there was just something that rang a little hollow. And I started reaching out for it. And slowly, like they say, if you search, you'll find. And I would find that, hey, there's this little string of kerera that I'd pull and I'll unravel and find a whole yarn behind it. And it's, mind-blowing information, mind-blowing way of thinking. And that's kind of how I've always been. And even till today, I'm still searching, and it's something that may never, ever stop. So that's really my backstory with Kerera and how I've been. Whenever I have an opportunity to share, I always feel very privileged to do so, and I don't take it for granted. So, this is what happened with Matire Gemi. And I know your question is, the next question is around which episode.
Hey, Kwani, I have to ask Kwani, Aduri Akiama, they take the questions before they are provided or what?
They just know. They preempt. They know. It's
they
in
know
the stars.
it's coming.
They know it's coming. So giving you those answers as well. No, but in all due seriousness, Matire Gemi, the first episode that I ever listened to, it's actually my wife who told me, hey, have you listened to this, this podcast? It's really awesome. And I'm thinking, oh, okay, cool. I'll check it out. And the first one I listened to was actually the one on Gemi and the power of Gemi. And it is still my favorite episode because, it was very well delivered. And I think it also is it was very well put together, but also it's how it made me feel, I think, there was this sense that I was like, oh, wow, here are guys who are doing exactly what I've been thinking I need to also do. And they were doing it with such great style and very awesome delivery. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And, the two of you, the way you delivered it, the friendship that was oozing through it, the power of Njeri and the power of Waiyaki, very different individuals, that also just made it that much more beautiful. And I was like, wow, this is awesome. And I think you guys will remember, I reached out, not thinking that I would ever be on the podcast, but I was like, hey guys, if you ever need someone to help you do some research, let me know. That's kind of how, that was the extent of what I was interested in doing. But I guess one thing led to another, and here we are.
Yeah. It's so beautiful to have had you on this journey. I know in season 1 we had you in 5 episodes, right? Which was a fantastic fantastic. And since then, you've continued to bring so much richness to our experience and just continuing to round us out with your knowledge and perspective. It's been a really good experience. Thank you, King Ori.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So, Njeri, are you going to tell us about your journey? We're not going to skip over you.
Well, no, thank you, Waiyaki. I think for me, it's been an interesting journey, and I've actually tried to reflect as to what brought me to this moment where we're sitting together here. And it's actually interesting because when I reflect on my childhood, I actually reflect on my father. And many people actually do not know that I was not raised in a Christian home, right? But we went to Christian schools, right? And when I say that we did not grow up in a Christian home, my father always made us question what we thought to be true. And I remember he would ask us to question, he would refer to God as the Kikuyu God. And I remember that my dad would actually ask us the question, why do we believe in the Christian God and not Gai, the Kikuyu God? And this is at a very young age where my dad would actually, while we were not raised in a home where there was a lot of steeping in Agikuyu tradition. We certainly were very modern. But unlike most families, my father himself was rooted in Ogikuyu. So my father himself actually would question our religion. So there was no intersection of Ogikuyu and Christianity as happened in many homes, right? So really the voice that remained there was one that questioned. And for me, that has always been something that is very fascinating and something I told my dad I told myself I'm going to ask my dad this weekend, whether there was intentionality behind that. But knowing my dad, there probably really was. So that idea of thinking of us as whole and our history and our religion as a valid one, even when everybody around us did not embrace our natural Ogikuyu religion as a valid one, right? It's not until later that many people started to embrace that, right? Or not many, some people in the city. So that for me is fascinating. And then fast forward to about 2016, I go through this crisis in my life, and I mean more like a spiritual crisis where I'm asking questions like, who am I? Right? Like, who am I really? And I think that happens to a lot of us who are in the diaspora. Like, what do I want? Who am I? Why was I put on this earth? And then you start to ask those questions and you start to feel very uncentered, and you're almost seeking some truth that you don't know where to get that truth from, right? And naturally, some of that truth comes from within, right? So it was very interesting actually to go through that journey. And then boom, a couple of years later, here comes Waiyaki, one of my friends and teachers. And then boom, here comes Matire Gemi. And then boom, here comes King Ori, one of my friends and teachers. So it's almost like, and then there's also other people who've continued to enter my world from the world of Ogikuyu. And it's fascinating how they have just been coming into my world without me seeking them naturally for that. So for me, I feel like it's been a journey of synchronicity, starting with my father, who never criticized Christianity. It was his. It was whatever choice we wanted to make religion-wise, but it was more he made us question what the truth is. And I think that opened me up to be receptive to even the message that we're getting today. So my favorite episode, guys, for me, it's without a doubt episode 3 and 5, right? So 3 was where we were talking about the Agikuyu religion and spirituality, part 1. And it's where we even started to deconstruct some things which we believed about who we were that were not true, like Goma and Gomi, right? So I think that aligns so well with this thing that my parents embedded in me to question, right, everything and to be open to the answers that come. And then when we came to episode 5, that's even where King Ori, you also came in and you even blew this whole Goma thing. But even you guys really helped us understand that we had a true sense of spirituality from this episode. And so it connected so nicely with the foundation that my father had set so many years ago when we were children. It's like you finally closed that gap for me through those 2 episodes, the 2 of you. So to me, those 2, without a doubt, are my favorite episodes because they show the string from childhood to today. That's it for me, guys.
Excellent.
Yeah.
I mean, this whole thing has been a beautiful thing, and you're right. Let's see how season 3 inspires us to move forward.
Absolutely.
I agree.
Yes,
So let me ask you this, guys. I think now it's time for us to get into the season reflections. So what I'd love to do is for us to go into every episode and you guys actually start to share with us what was the key takeaway, the highlight of each of the episodes. So I think we should start with the first episode in season 2. And this first episode was called Moshewa Mogekoyo, the home of a Mogekoyo. This one was a really good one that we introduced, this concept to our listeners about. So, King Ori, why don't you tell us what your highlight from this episode actually was?
Yeah, Moshewa Mogekoyo was a really good boot up kind of an episode because it actually set the stage and kind of helped us to reimagine what the homestead was like. We learned about that there's a difference between a nyoba and a digira, and that both of these were found within the Moshie, and that the nyoba was a woman's homestead, and that the digira was the man's homestead. So a lot of people, I'm sure, learned that men and women did not actually sleep in the same bedroom, right? That should have been a key takeaway. And that this kind of also follows a natural cosmology when you look at how those two kind of flow around each other, how they interact around each other. It's almost like a planet and a sun, or a moon and a planet, in that they stabilize each other. Each cannot exist without the other, and vice versa. We understood that the Nyoba is indeed is the nucleus of this home, and that's where most of the ceremonies would happen. It would have most of the people who lived in this homestead would be actually residing there, and that this digira was had a different role to play, which was protective, instructive. But these two were two unique and very powerful institutions in of themselves. So we learned a lot about the interplay between those two. We learned about.
Can I actually add something there, King?
Sure, yeah.
So it was actually funny because this weekend I was watching, Netflix released this show called Animals. I think it was Animals I was watching, right? And it was fascinating because one of the episodes had a lions. And I know we've all seen lions before. But what was fascinating is that there was this lion, and he had his, I don't know what they call it, troop, whatever, with a bunch of lionesses and kids. What I didn't know is so interesting because I saw the parallels to the Mogekoyo way of life, right? And then Yoba. So here's what would happen. The lionesses would be the ones who are hanging with the cubs, raising them until they're older. But they would go hunting and they would come and get the food and bring the food home. But the lion would just be chilling. So I was like, why is this lion just chilling? He's really big and ferocious. Shouldn't he be out there hunting? So it was actually fascinating because the food would come home and then the lion in their natural order would eat first. And I'd be like, are you kidding me? The lioness has just spent a lot of time hunting and the lion is here eating before anybody else. But it was fun. And this lion is huge and ferocious. But then they actually ended up explaining something, that the reason why the lion is not out there hunting and why the lion eats first is because the lion is the one that provides protection, right, to the entire home, right? That if there's any invaders, any attackers, this lion needs all their strength and energy to actually protect the pride. So it was fascinating to see the parallels, between the Nyoba, where the wife, the mom and her children stay while they're young, right? And then, of course, the Gira, which is about protection, right? Where the actual lion hangs out, his main goal being protecting the pride. It was actually quite fascinating. I just wanted to throw that one in there.
Oh yeah, that is a perfect analogy. There's another one you actually told us. We told us another story last time during that particular episode about how you would go to your shosho's kitchen in Njeri, I believe, and that it was full of dogo. I remember that, and that how it would sting. It would sting your eyes, but that once you got in, and once you kind of got used to that, there was this beauty in the experience of being there in her kitchen and how it warmed your soul. And I remembered that because it kind of just, I thought that that's generally how it is when we start going back to understand our culture. We see some things, just like you just mentioned. Why is that lion not hunting? We will come back to and you look at our culture and say, why are these men sitting around on jongoas just talking while the women are doing this? And at that instant, it might sting our eyes because we're looking at it from a different lens. Mm-hmm. We're looking and saying, that should not be that way because where I come from, we don't do X, right? But the moment you get used to that little sting, you start to see the beauty. You start to, take on this other lens and you start to better understand what's happening. You just like this lion. Now you get it. You get why the lion has to be in tip-top shape. He can't have just run after a gazelle. And then here comes, a bunch of hyenas that he needs to fight off. It would not be a productive way for him to spend his energy. So in the same way, we had the same sort of scenario. Our men had a lot of godiga to do. Mm-hmm. And this is what the gira means. It's patching of holes. Whether it is physically to do it with a fence perimeter and make sure there are not wild dogs or anything coming in, or to fight off animals that may be around there, or to always be on alert. You can't have the same man be on alert, but at the same time be grinding corn. It may not be the best way for them to spend their energy. At the same time, they are on alert to see whether there is any injustice happening within the family of any particular person. And remember, he's also playing the judge who has to be brought for all these issues to resolve on a daily basis. So, from our lens, and this just goes to, I think, any time you go look into any culture, but more so our own culture, if you're not familiar with what you're looking at, you may get a little sting in your eyes at the beginning. But, keep watching and the image will become clear and you should be able to appreciate what you're seeing.
Oh, I love that close so nicely, which is anytime we're facing culture, we should be sure not to evaluate it with just a Western lens, but instead we should take the time to understand why that culture was before we pass judgment on that culture, right? Or on those patterns that you see in that culture, because there might be reasons for it. Sometimes there are no good reasons for it, right? But sometimes there are good reasons for it. And I think that is such a good one. Love that. Waiyaki, anything to add before we go to episode 2?
Yeah, I'll just add on that story of the lions, because I love nature shows, Njeri and Kingori. So, the lion has to protect the lionesses and the kids, because if you've watched other nature shows, what happens is if this lion is incapacitated, lions are not rational. So if another lion comes and invades this home, they usually will kill the children.
Yep.
And so it's a very sad. So really the lion's main job is to protect the women and the children. And so that's really a man's role. And I think that episode brought that out really well, like the role-based symbiotic union between the man and the woman, the yin and the yang, so to speak. The other thing I'll say, and then we can move on to the next episode, is just a saying. There's a saying that says, Shia Moshi e Tishomo. We talked about the saying, Moshi e Dogo, and we explained what that means. It's kind of a deep saying. Shia Moshi e Tishomo what it says is, the information about the home is not dispersed out, basically. So if you have private matters about your home, you have to keep it private, because you don't know who's listening, you don't know who your enemies are, And so the Mogekoyo was about privacy, and if you contrast with today's culture, or the Western culture of oversharing about your home, or putting everything out on social media, for example, the Mogekoyo was very private in their home affairs, and they valued personal privacy. And so I hope our audience can understand what Shiamoshi Tishomo means.
Nice. Thank you. I love that, Waiyaki. Thank you for adding that. All right, guys. I think that what we talked about here may also have bled into episode 2. So maybe we'll just go over through that one very quickly. So maybe, Waiyaki, we could go to you for episode 2 really quickly. And episode 2 was about the economy of the Mogekoyo, right? So you tell me if there's a lot of parallels and if we should just jump into episode 3, or maybe you can give us some quick highlights. What did you see in episode 2, which was the economy of the Mogekoyo?
We learned that in episode 2, one of the things that destroyed the economy of the Mogekoyo was the coming of fiat currency. And, that being introduced where you had to go and work for Mzungu or work in the highlands so that you can pay your hard tax and provide for your family. That really destroyed a lot of our creative processes, or our artisans, what they used to create and what they used to build. The Mogekoyo used to do many things, from fashioning iron ornaments, creating all sorts of art. They were very creative. We are very creative, if I may use present tense. But we kind of lost that when colonization came. But it also showed that the Mogekoyo is hardworking, and their economy was vibrant, and they would barter. Both men and women would be involved in trading, and there are some people who are better than trade. Mamoshera and Ashera are known for trading, so I don't want to beat my chest on it, but the Ashera are said to be excellent traders. And so the Mogekoyo had their own economy. So going back to what King Ori said about civilization, we had a system of trading. We had a system of creating goods and services, So that I think that episode brought that out. And I think I'll add a saying just to back up that episode. There's a saying that says, "Komada gotire hinya takuramata." Komada means to earn, So what that means. Komada gotire hinya. It's like earning is not as difficult as keeping your earnings. So you can make a lot of money or make a lot of earnings, but being able to manage your earnings is very important. So I wanted to leave our audience with that saying, "Komada gotire hinyata kuramata." So kuramata is to manage well. So when you hear the word muramati, is somebody who is a trustee, somebody who's managing wealth or land or a family. So it's important that our audience understands that the Mogekoyo used to say that, and we still say that. Komada gotire hinyata kuramata.
I love that saying so much, Waiyaki. And even what you were saying before, I was actually talking to a friend this weekend, and we were talking about the exchange of money for your gift. We started talking about the kind of a little bit about sometimes the Kenyan culture in general, and I'm generalizing, where we may not want to always pay for certain gifts, right? We want them to receive those gifts. So let's say somebody comes to do conflict resolution for you, right? You want somebody to just come as a moduri and just do it for free, right? And not realize that there is a gift happening in that experience. So maybe I was wrong or not, but I ended up telling them that in their Yokoyo culture, there was this belief, right, that when you receive a gift from somebody, even if it is somewhat like a spiritual gift or a talent, right, because that's a definition of wealth, right? That there was this almost like spiritual or earthly expectation to then give something back. So let's say a Mudhuri comes in and uses his wisdom, right, to develop your children, I don't know, or to resolve a conflict, then you would give something back, whether it's, I don't know what we would give a body something, but there was always this exchange, right, which I think, which really, and you guys can tell me if it's true or not, but it really speaks to our culture that really honored truly the definitions of wealth, right? And really looked at these talents and gifts and our economy. Part of our economy was actually grown by giving this unique talents and gifts. And in exchange for those talents and gifts, you get compensation back. Isn't that part of our culture? So not only do we need to manage our wealth, like Waiyaki is saying, but in order to bring it in, we also deserve wealth back for our gifts or talents.
Njeri, you're very right, and I'll give you a word for that. It's actually duhi.
Yes.
Duhi is what we give to our elders or someone who has done you well, and you're trying to say thank you. You can't, saying thank you with just your words. It's great, but it's even better when you can give something, even a cup of water. When you give something back, it helps.
Right.
It's better than just saying it. It's a very appropriate cultural response to a good deed.
Love it. Okay. Well, now we go to episode 3. This one was quite delicious because we finally tackled a topic that had been of big interest to our listeners, which had to do with Irua, which is initiation into adulthood. So, King Ori, we're going to pass this one on to you. So what was the highlight from this episode? For anybody that wants to, and let me say this real quick, right? The beauty of listening to all the highlights is if you have not listened to all 10 episodes, right? What you can do is see which of the highlights is extremely attractive to you, meaning which one do you want to learn more about, and then use the highlights to pick and choose which episodes you're going to go deeper into. So, King Ori, tell us about episode 3, Irua.
Yes.
What was the big takeaway?
Yeah, so Irua, I think our listeners walked away with a clear understanding that the word circumcision doesn't begin to really break down what Irua means. Circumcision is just one part, and it's one of 3 parts. Circumcision is a physical cutting, but beyond that, we came to understand about Iruareaomo, which is mind and spirit. That there was a transformation of the initiate mentally and spiritually on top of the physical change that happened. Hopefully our listeners walked away understanding that this was a key piece of the process of higher education in the Mogekoyo's culture. That this was a time where not only were they becoming illiterate, but they were also being educated about themselves, about their people, about their culture, and all the roles that they had played and will be playing moving forward. That should have come through very clearly. We also came to learn that there were these key people, these very, very important people in that process. There were many of them, but I'll mention just 2. There was Motiri, now Akeri. These are the people who were the anchors. Someone who was an older youth who had gone through this prior and was there to guide our initiate through the process and would really become a mentor, a brother, a sister moving forward for this individual for the rest of their life. We learnt about many other people who will play those roles. That the initiates gained another father, another mother through that process, and so there was. We learnt about how well guided, how well supported an individual was when they went through this process, and how they continue to be guided moving forward. And finally, we should have learnt about Jama, the unique groupings and councils of youth, councils of young men. In particular, we talked about that in great detail, that these young men would be ushered into and would set the stage for them becoming Adhuri Akeama, in later on in life, and also for women, how their jamas would be a place where they sought not just wisdom from elderly women, but also justice for their issues. So this I think to me was a very special episode because it's often not talked about in our media. So this should have been a special one.
Wow, it really was, King Orin. That's such a good summary. Thank you for that. And I'll check in with you in a second, Waiyaki, to see if you have anything to add.
Okay.
And one of the things that for me was so mind-blowing or eye-opening was the fact that with the girls and as women, we lost the physical cutting of Irua, which was, to me, good. But what we did is we lost also the other aspects of Irua that came with the education. And that was not just girls either. Now the boys continued the physical cutting, but they lost the other educational aspects, the spiritual and other aspects of Irua, which I think contributes significantly to some of the challenges we've been having as a society today. Because as young girls and young boys, all the way till men and women, we didn't get some of that critical education to go through the different stages of our lives, but also to set us up, right, in terms of a community that has great interpersonal relationships, across the board, right? So thank you. That was a great episode. Anything to add there, Waiyaki?
Yeah, the only thing I'll add, because both of you summarized it really well, the only thing I'll add is that this philosophy of initiation, or what we call Irua, is the education that was given for your life. It's your what we call in Kikuyu, or how we say it, is ogewa motorere. So how are you going to live once you become, once you pass this stage, once you become an adult? It's the education that we missed because, yes, we were told go to primary, elementary school, high school, go to university, get a degree, go to college, do all those things. But then we missed, how do you live? How do you live with your neighbors? How do you live with your wife? How do you live with your husband? How do you live with your children? How do you raise your children? And that's the education that most of us are missing.
Yeah. How do you live with your in-laws?
How do you live with your in-laws? How do you relate with, what's your position in the world? When you look at the hierarchy of your life, how do you respect the people you work with, your bosses, strangers? That's why, for example, today, or when I was a kid, when we would get on a KBS, a Kenya bus, you could see young men or young girls waking up to let an elder sit down, But, you don't have that anymore. Today, everything is equal, it's equal opportunity. So it's how do you live within your community, which is the education that needs to be reinforced. Even more as important as education is, that's the education that's going to make you navigate life successfully.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Absolutely, Waiyaki. I love that. Oh, that was a great episode. That was episode 3, Irua. Okay, now we'll go into episode 4, and I'm going to turn to you, Waiyaki, to give us your initial thoughts. So episode 4 was all about udhoni na rurashio. Wow. If we have had a lot of questions about one process, it has to do with the process of rorashio. So this was the first part of introducing rorashio because we came to realize that it's not as simple as the transaction so many of us had thought about. So, Waiyaki, why don't you tell us about, so we'll just kind of summarize all the three episodes of Udhoni as one. So I'll have you go speak about those episodes, and Kengori as well, to kind of summarize episode 4, 5, and 6. So Waiyaki, what are some key highlights around Udhoni na rurashio?
One of the key highlights, those episodes are expansive, and the knowledge is expansive. And Kengori gave us a narration that was pretty long and detailed on what the process is, what the steps were taken for in the process of rurashio. But one of the key takeaways that I would like our audience to understand is it's not a checklist. Odoni and Horatio can be different. There are nuances depending on the family you come from, depending on the Muherega you come from, depending on the Bare you come from. There's nuances, and so when going through this process, this very important process, you have to kuhoya kirera. You have to find knowledgeable people who will walk you through and make you understand the process. That's one thing. And then the other thing is, I think a highlight that is missed a lot when people are talking about the kirera for Rorashio and Odoni is the fact that the Adoni, and I know we mentioned this, but the Adoni are the father of the bride and the father of the groom. And maybe one thing maybe we mentioned or we didn't mention is the fact that those two men usually will take an oath to protect the marriage of their children. I don't know if we mentioned that.
We talked about that. Gare ehetagwo ni mundu na muthoniwe.
Na muthoniwe, yeah, exactly. Yeah, people have to realize that that's a very important oath, especially if you're a parent and your son, daughter is getting married. That you're the first. The father, especially the father, is the one who protects the first line of defense for that union breaking up. And it's it's a very different concept from the Western philosophy on marriage, where it's just kind of the two individuals. That I think is something that people need to take very seriously, because that is one of the key. That was one of the key insurance policies, if I may call it that protected a lot of marriages. As we know, marriages have their ups and downs, but the men, the Adoni, are the ones who really came through to protect, and they took an oath, a sacred oath, to protect this union.
Oh, I love that so much. Yes, those were such key and fundamental points that you brought up, Waiyaki, and we're going to come to you, King Ori. But I also wanted to add, Waiyaki, that one of the things that was so profound to me is how we shattered the misconception that Rorashio is bride price, that you're buying a bride, right? And that I think it was you, Waiyaki, was saying, or maybe you, King Ori, who talked about the fact that the Agikoyo did not trade human beings, right? So that really Rorashio had a much bigger spiritual significance. And when we think about it today, where we call it buying a bride, that really is, again, the example of the lion and the pride that we had before, where you're looking at culture from a Western lens or a different lens, and you're not really understanding what is really happening within the culture. So when we think of Rorashio from that lens, of course you're buying a bride. And which bride wants to be bought like a piece of property, right? So you guys helped to really shatter that and help people see that if you look at our culture and its beauty, Rorashio is actually such a beautiful thing that we would want to partake in when we really understand what it is and not look at it from a Western lens. What do you think about that, Waiyaki?
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest myth we shattered with that reading from the Southern Kikuyu before 1903, where even LSB Leakey himself understood that it was deeper than that. And it's going back to what King Ori is saying, that when you look at culture, you can't look at the surface. You can look at the surface and maybe you'll not understand, or it might repulse you, but you have to go deeper and delve deep and understand, why are things, ask those questions, why. And I'll say another thing before we, King Ori, I know King Ori has something to say, is, we have to stop compare or looking at our culture with the Western lens of analysis. Because there are parallels, yes, but there are some things that just don't match word for word or concept to concept. So when you look at even like the concepts of patriarchy and matriarchy, and I know King Ori talked about this at length in season 1, we didn't have those concepts or those words in our culture, in our language. We didn't have them. So when you say, oh, this Kikuyus are matriarchal or patriarchal or patrilineal or this or that, it might not fit 100%, so, go back and try and understand the concepts from a Mogekuyu perspective or from an African perspective.
Yeah, I love that. Yes. Thank you so much, Waiyaki. All right, King Ori, what are some of your thoughts around these episodes on Udhoni na Rurashio?
Yeah, I hope what came through was how beautiful and well thought out this process of marriage was and is among the Agekuyu. It is beautiful. There's a lot of respect and love for the people who are giving you a bride. We see in the Western culture some level of, condescending attitude or some kind of rivalry with in-laws or some kind of hatred, love-hate. There was none of that. There was nothing but love and respect for people who were gracious enough to give you a bride, to give you someone to call your wife for the rest of your life, and to give you someone to call a husband for the rest of your life. It was a good thing, and you were predisposed to love them, and you actually positioned yourself to integrate with them fully and be part of the same family and be allies. So, let's not learn everything from our media exposure and start picking on things that we have no business picking up from the West. We have our own things to lean on. Let us have that sanctity of marriage. Let us really protect it. Let us respect our family. Let us live by our own ways, which I think the more we dig into, we realize are beautiful and are able to give us a meaningful life. Other than that, I'd say lens. So, there's no one paradigm to life. There are many ways to look at things and organize. And so, let's not be tricked into thinking that there's only one way that things can be, and that so and so has tried it and it has failed. Therefore, we now can all only go to the next step 2 according to their plan and their playbook. No, we have had successful institutions. Let us relearn them where we've forgotten, and let's protect them and be proud of them. I think hopefully that came through very clearly on those 3 episodes on Rurashio. And also I'll take this opportunity to officially, I know Njeri had stolen my thunder last time and mentioned something about a book. I don't know what book Njeri was talking about, but but there is a book that with the help of Matire Ngemi, we're going to be launching on this very topic. We hope to get into it in a little more detail, and I'm very excited about that project and looking forward to it. So we'll be announcing dates and hopefully even have some Q&A sessions here and there while we do that release. What do you think, Njeri?
Oh, I think it's so beautiful. I think this book is going to be everything we have been looking for, at least from a phase 1 perspective. And the reason I say that is because people keep asking all the time about the process is broken down very simply in English as it has to do with the process of Rurashio. And not only people who listen to the podcast, but any young person who's going and thinking about getting into marriage, right? This is a common question we have. How does the Rurashio process work? How does the Gurario process work? All of these questions are top of mind, and I'm so excited that you have written this book for us, King Ori, and we are so proud as Matire Ngemi to have the opportunity to share it out with our listeners and the world. So you guys stay tuned. This book is fantastic. It is the kind of book you are going to hold on to because it is going into this process of Rurashio. You are not going to want to miss out, you guys. So hang in there. More details to come. I'm so excited. And King Ori, congratulations on writing this well-needed book.
Thank you, and congratulations to all of us here at Material Gemi, because we've all put our energy into this, and so can't wait. It'll be a win for all of us.
Congratulations, man.
Thank you.
Yes, it really will be. Love it. Okay, guys. So, Waiyaki, now we went after that because now we had 3 episodes on Rorashio. That's how deep it was, right? Then we had 2 episodes on the listener's choice. Waiyaki, what was this listener's choice all about?
So, listener's choice was, 2 episodes where we basically requested the audience to send us in questions, and we would try and answer them. And so, we got an overwhelming amount of questions, and I think most of the 2 themes I saw in the questions that we received were obviously on marriage and then also single parenthood, which was the last episode which we recorded. But there was an extensive amount of questions and curiosity on those 2 topics, which are sort of related, so to speak. And so we did our best to tackle those questions, and they were many. And I don't even think we tackled all of them. So I think we did a pretty good job, and I think even the responses in the messages that we received thanking us for those questions was adequate, or it showed that we tried to do our best to answer them. And the questions that we don't know, we don't know, so.
Yeah, I agree, Waiyaki. I think we brought this idea of the listeners episode from season 1 because our listeners really loved, hearing some of your direct answers to their common questions. Like, it was just that opportunity to almost have a Q&A, which wasn't live, but at least they got their answers, their questions answered in a recorded version. And so, Waiyaki, thank you for you and King Ori doing this, which I think kind of leads me, before we go into the last episode, to a really exciting additional announcement, which is, since we started this process, we have been getting so many requests for us to have live sessions where you guys are present with us. You're participating. You're seeing our smiling faces. You're asking questions. You're hanging out with us. You're sharing your stories with us. We're sharing stories. We're all connecting on this concept of Ogekoyo and really answering some of your questions live that we've not been able to answer in any other format. So I am excited to say that in addition to this amazing book, we also are diversifying, and we are going to be having these connection sessions where you will get to be present with us, and we will all share, enjoy education, fun, and in our culture. So stay tuned for those. Those are going to be delicious, my friends. You do not want to miss out on these live sessions. So we'll be dropping some more details on that. So with that said, King Ori, why don't you tell us about episode 10? What were some of the highlights on this episode on single parenthood?
Wow.
Episode 9.
Episode 9. Yes. Thank you, Waiyaki.
Yeah, episode 9 was actually a pretty big one, and it flowed very well from the listener's choice questions that came up from there around women's rights, children's rights, and now we went into single parenthood, which primarily we talked about meruru and that process called kohoya kiradimo or gutuka kehekia mushi, which is that misunderstood process where we think that a woman is paying rorashio for themselves to, marry themselves. This is still an area that, Njeri, I think we should probably in the next episode touch on yet again. But I think we did a pretty good job of demystifying what this was all about, the rights that a single parent had, the rights that are especially a widowed mother or would have in their family, even what divorce kind of looked like in the event that it did happen, and in the very rare event it happened. We went into a lot of detail around that, and we touched on some heavy things that is not mainstream Kerera, especially on the issue of Meruru. We did the best we could, but we reminded our listeners that these are not matters to kind of be delved into lightly. These are matters that you always have to first go back home. Go back home. I mean, everything we've talked about here, if you have a ceremony, an igogona that you think you would like to have done, and you're using this podcast as the guide for that, I would like to ask you to pause and then first go and talk to some elders within your family, within your families or your neighbors. Seek out those elders. There are nuances to everyone's scenario. You need those, crevices understood, those nooks and crannies of your many issues. Everyone has a very unique scenario around their issues. Not everyone has a same Meruru problem. Not everyone has a similar issue of Kohoya Keradimo. So please, first go back, find those elders, talk to your parents, talk to your elder brothers and sisters. First, try and get some consensus around what it is that you're trying to do. Consult widely and then move forward. We're not here, and I think if we were a legal show, we would be saying that what we're giving you is not legal advice, but rather, sharing our perspective. That is exactly what's happening on this podcast. It's not legal advice for your specific scenario. We are, unpacking concepts, and so for your situation, please, once again, step back, go to your family, ask those questions there, and then build up slowly, and you will get your answers. And we hope that we have at least shared with you enough to know what questions to ask, and that really is as much as we can hope for.
Oh, yes, I love that so much. Oh, thank you for that. Waiyaki, any final thoughts on single parenthood?
Yeah, so just to piggyback on what King Ori said, that was a heavy topic to talk about, the concepts we talked about. And in fact, in the written literature, Kikuyu literature, not a lot is written about what we discussed on Meruru or on Guiko. That Kerera is usually, I don't want to say it's esoteric, but it's sort of hidden. It's a philosophy that's hidden, and the discussions on the different schools of thought on that topic are still going on. But like King Ori said, you have to go back to your elders. You have to go back home and seek this knowledge and try and understand the intricacies and the nuances of this knowledge. You won't find in-depth analysis or in-depth knowledge in any book, so to speak, on some of these concepts. I'll also say, speaking of books, me personally, I've gotten a lot of help and research from Madaga.com. I want to say he's a friend of mine, the gentleman that runs Madaga.com, and very helpful. He has a store right now in Kikuyu that you can go visit. Very knowledgeable on Kerera. You can buy books and seek knowledge, but for the most part, seek knowledge from your elders and people who know. When you sit down and talk to a gentleman about Kerera, face to face, it's very different from what we are doing right now on the podcast. We're really giving cliff notes and kind of highlights. The humility that I have developed from understanding Kerera is the fact that it's such a wealth of knowledge and it's so deep that we've just scratched the surface.
Oh, I love that so much. And what a great summary to season 2. And what I can say is that it was a season that was a little heavier sometimes, but it was deep. It was so deep with so much knowledge where we went beyond season 1 and we captured a lot of richness in our culture, and we did so bravely and unapologetically. And I really have enjoyed this experience with you, Waiyaki and and King Ori. Thank you so much for doing this. But like they say, there's this song, and the song goes something like, "It's so hard to say goodbye." And do you guys even know that song?
Yeah. We do. You're not doing it justice, but we know the song.
Yeah, so the good news is it is hard to say goodbye, to yesterday. But the good news is we're not really saying goodbye. Because if you stay tuned, my friends, I'm going to ask you guys to stay tuned before both Waiyaki and King Ori give their final thoughts, right? Their final goodbye note. But stay tuned, not only for the book, because this book you want to get your hands on, my friends. You want to get your hands on this book, but also for the live sessions, the live connections that we are going to be having with you starting very soon. And you do not want to miss out. So stay tuned. By the end of the episode, we are going to introduce you to or give you more details about both of these things. So we're not really saying goodbye. We're saying see you soon in a new, fresh, and exciting way before season 3. So I think with that, I'll turn it over to you, King Ori. And I'm going to just ask for your final reflections that you want to leave this audience with as we close season 2.
Right. So my parting words on this are that we have a civilization. We have an African civilization. We have Ubuntu. We have Ungwana that comes with that. We have our way of working. We have our way of living. We have our way of interacting with each other and with our environment, with animals and plants, which was based on a level of consciousness that it would do us well in this day and age to reclaim. Let us not blindly keep following those who have led us to where we are today, to live in a world that has become less conscious, less aware of its destructive nature. Let us go back. We're talking about concepts like Sankofa, which say go back and fetch that which you have lost. We're talking about Ogekoyo. There are two concepts, Goshokia Roe Mukara, to bring the river back to its original path. Also, in order to be able to do that, we have to start by looking into it. Where did the bell lose its little ringer, its gong, right?
Gong, yeah.
So, we have to go back and investigate where is it that we took the wrong turns, and what can we reclaim today? Because we have beautiful institutions that would serve us better than what we're seeing today. We've seen those statistics. More than 50% of marriages end up in divorce. We're talking about now, we learned last time that of ladies 45 and younger, that around 60% are now single parents. This needs to change, and I think our culture has some solutions for this. So mine is to ask and to send out this call to action for us, all of us, to investigate our cultures and see where it is that we can relearn some things and assume them and assimilate them and protect them, so that we can reconstruct our societies and have a better future to call for. That's really all I would have to say. Thank you very much, Njeri and Waiyaki. It has been a pleasure, and I can't wait to see what we can do here in the future.
Oh, me too, King Ori. It has been such a pleasure having you as part of the crew. To say it has been delicious is an understatement. Thank you for all the richness you have brought to this experience. We thank you and we are grateful. All right, Waiyaki, what are your parting words to our listeners?
All I'll say is, this season has been wonderful working with you, Njeri and King Ori, in putting this together. It's been a journey. I think it was a really good experience to dig deep into some of these topics. And I'll just say add to what King Ori is saying is, we have to go and find, with the way the moral fabric of our society is moving, we have to go back and find where we lost our way. And, you can't, if you have a disease, you can't heal the symptoms. You can't just put bandages on. You have to go to the root of the disease and find where you went wrong or what happened, so that you can get well again. And also even the Bible says that, when Jesus was asked questions, he said, I didn't come to abolish the law of the prophets. So he didn't come to destroy what was good that was of old. So even as we have our culture, we have our civilization, we have concrete philosophies, concrete ways of life that we can study and live by. It's not just to study and live by. I think our culture, there's a certain sense or certain way that people can think that culture is cool. It's cool to dress up in traditional gear and take pictures on Instagram, but it's our way of life. It's sacred. It's holy. It shouldn't be taken lightly. It was a way of life for our ancestors for thousands of years. So we have to take it seriously and respect it.
Yes, thank you for those reflections, Waiyaki. And I just love what you just said, that our culture is more than just pictures. Wearing clothes and taking pictures, that we are much deeper, than that. And so for me, my closing thoughts have to do with the two of you. Just to say thank you on behalf of our listeners for really coming here and pouring into us the knowledge that is within you and the knowledge that you have gathered over the years. So Waiyaki and King Ori, we say thank you, with me being one of the beneficiaries of your insights and one of your students. I think King Ori and Waiyaki and I also say a deep thank you to you, our listeners. You have continued to be present. You have continued to give us a reason to do this podcast. You have continued to listen. You have continued to share it with others. You have continued to participate, whether it's on DM, on social media. We are so grateful for your engagement, because you give us a reason to continue doing this. Even in our imperfection, a reason to continue representing our ancestors, representing our culture, and representing who we are. So thank you. And stay tuned right after this for more on the delicious book and the delicious live connections. Thank you for listening and for joining us on this journey where we honor our history, where we honor our heritage, where we honor our ancestors. We are grateful. You can find Matire Gemi on social media, which is Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can also find us on Clubhouse, where we will occasionally host some live discussions following some of our episodes. We look forward to seeing you. Our website is matire-gemi.simplecast.com. Our email is matire.gemi@gmail.com. And this podcast is hosted, produced, and contributed to by Waiyaki Yeshanga, King Ori Kanyi, and Njeri Diho. Thank you, and please share this widely.